We'll get back to that.
Thank you for playing. Is that a real podcast or fake?
Wow.
Pablo Torre finds out
Plausibly.
is a real podcast that does real journalism. Don Van Natta is not someone that sports leagues want sniffing around their stuff, and Don Van Natta has now done some more reporting on Pablo Torre's report, and the ESPN headline today is sources, NFLPA, NFL agreed to keep collusion findings secret. Pablo, your initial story, while a big story, did not resonate the way that I wanted to, and Mike Florio's accusation is that the media is partnered with the NFL and either downplayed the story or ignored the story. This now makes it so that I believe this story's about to get a lot larger, at least in part, because now you've got the attention of the players saying, my union did what? So explain to me what you saw in this reporting and what it means.
Yeah, so Don Van Natta is obviously one of the great investigative journalists who has ever lived. And Kalen Collar, who worked with him on this story, is also an excellent reporter. And so it has been interesting and amusing to see the floodgates open on delay. In order of the things you reference, right? Like Florio having that theory, I have a bit more of an Occam's razor theory, which is simply that people aren't exactly eager to co-sign investigative independent journalism when it also jeopardizes the places they get their sourcing from, their information, the way they eat. Maybe that's a separate but very similar way to the way that Florio put it. But the fact that Don has entered the fray has been incredibly, I would say, both predictable because the story is real, and also welcome because this is what I was hoping would happen when you lay out a roadmap in a 50-minute episode around a 61-page document that had never been released before. And so when Don says, by the way, there are a couple of amazing details in this, by the way, that just make this something that obviously is enormous. One of those details is that they discovered what I had alluded to, which is that there was an actual confidentiality agreement signed between leaders of the NFL and the NFLPA to suppress the document that I published. So there's an actual binding legal document that my episode, essentially sort of like broke open because now everyone, according to this reporting, and I want to quote Don here because I just don't want to smell my own farts, quote, the confidentiality agreement kept the details of Droney's finding, that's the arbiter, his finding from the players until the Pablo Torre Finds Out podcast published the full arbitrator's report on June 24th. And then it goes on to discuss that this created a stir among the players. And to me, the next step in all of this, Dan, is like, what do the players think? What are they going to do about it?
What should they think? What should they think?
Well, another detail that was reported by Don that happened literally this week, I think puts to rest any ambiguity. Because the NFLPA under Lloyd Howell, the executive director, who's at the center of the story we reported, has decided 6 months after he got the ruling to appeal the ruling. So just keep in mind everything that's happening here. So they suppress the ruling. I report the ruling. There's radio silence. Don Van Natta starts calling around, and the NFLPA says, actually, we're going to appeal the ruling. There's very important things in here. It is, as possible, a clear indication that they messed this up that you could get. They are appealing the ruling that they tried to bury because they realize how bad a look it is that they never did anything with it.
Well, I've got follow-up questions here, but does this tie into the NFL now wanting $12 million in lawyer damages and fees because they're appealing a ruling that they agreed to keep confidential and not appeal?
Yes. So the NFL had an agreement, again, a confidential agreement, that we're not going to do anything with this. It's going to be suppressed. The NFLPA suddenly now, because of this public pressure, is saying, actually, we got to do something about this. Sorry, guys. And the NFL is saying in response, well, then you owe us legal fees. $12 million because our whole deal has been shattered. Now, of course, there is fine legal print that Florio has been reporting on Pro Football Talk about whether that's actually plausible that they would get the $12 million. But now we're in the realm of a more familiar landscape of NFL versus NFLPA saber rattling. frankly, this reporting has pushed the NFLPA to behave finally like a union again. And that is as indicting as anything you could argue that we reported at all.
That's what I was saying, that I would be, if I was a member of this union, I would be unbelievably mad and asking all sorts of questions. So answer this for me, Pablo. What was the NFLPA's incentive in agreeing to keep all of that private?
So in the episode, we posit a number of theories that are validated and reported. And one of them is that J.C. Tretter, who was the former president of the NFLPA as a player, who became the chief strategy officer, who handpicked Lloyd Howell to be the executive director, was caught in those documents, in the discovery, the expedited discovery, the texts, the emails, the transcripts, to be trashing Russell Wilson and to be blaming him for not getting the full guaranteed contract that the NFLPA wanted. And instead, what happened was, it was revealed that the owners were found to have been in communication with each other and with the NFL around an attempt to prevent full guarantees from being given out. But what J.C. Tretter said was used against the NFLPA in that arbitration proceeding. And so what does that mean? It means that J.C. Tretter, who has designs, we also report, to be the head of the union. And Dan, this is a job that's only been held by a handful of people, literally. It's like Gene Upshaw and D. Smith and Lloyd Howell, right? There's a short list of guys, a couple other names on there. It's a long-term, forever job that J.C. Tretter wanted. He wanted to suppress this whole thing because that made him look bad. That's one part of it. The other part, this whole thing started because of the DeMaurice Smith regime, which was way more adversarial with the league. Lloyd Howell was the go-along-to-get-along guy, a corporate executive who was meant to be friendly, sort of restart relations with the NFL. So this was a win, in our view, in my view, in Florio's view, for the previous regime of the union, not the current one, which came in with a whole different strategy. So it wasn't a win for them. And then I think third and most generously, they thought that if we keep this quiet and we do this thing with the NFL, confidentiality agreement, of course, now known, then this is going to pay off for the union long term. The problem, of course, is that that third most generous theory is also now repudiated by the fact that they just appealed the bleeping ruling. So already, I just don't see any ground for this regime to stand on, even hypothetically, which is also kind of mind-blowing.
So take me through how average football players supposed to feel if your original theory is right, which is this was kept confidential because one of the people representing the players didn't want to look bad to the players or to anybody. So he ceases to represent the players and is now just representing himself.
It is a breach of, frankly, fiduciary duty. You are a union. Your job in a legal, professional, ethical sense is to represent your constituents, your players. And here you have one example, a concrete example, among others, of self-interest personally overriding collective self-interest. Right? And so this is unfortunately something that unions in America, and particularly this one in the NFL, have been battling for decades. But in this case, you have it so crystal clear, 4K quality documented that I think if you're a player, frankly, if you're a player who signed a new deal in 2021 when all this stuff was happening, it's about the offseason of 2021, where guys getting guarantees. The answer, it turns out, was no. Full guarantees. No one got them. They should be contemplating what is our legal recourse. I've talked to lawyers now who are wondering, when is the next shoe to drop going to be a lawsuit? When will, I don't want to get ahead of myself here because we're still reporting the story.
Justin Herbert could sue the league, could sue the union, could he not?
Justin Herbert, who was named in the text exchange between Michael Bidwill and Dean Spanos, the owner of the Chargers, Bidwill, the Cardinals owner, in which they are basically celebrating how they didn't give Kyler Murray full guarantees, which then helps Dean Spanos and the Chargers to not give Justin Herbert the full guarantees. I would imagine that guy logically would have a bone to pick, especially Dan. The extra layer of crazy on all of this is that those players that we've been naming, and this is Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and Justin Herbert, the four big stars named in this thing, they were never told or shown what was in the document that was about their livelihoods until I published it. They had never heard it. The union had never told them. They had never shown them. And so there is actively, I think, a would-be grievance if they choose to pursue it. But also, clearly, the union is behind the scenes on fire right now in every figurative sense. And I think everyone's running around trying to cover their own ass.
It would make sense. I pointed out yesterday that Peyton Manning's original contract had 0 guaranteed dollars in it. Brock Purdy's has 70% guaranteed dollars in it. And because of this, I've never seen Andrew Hawkins take more notes, and I don't think he's taking notes because he has any questions for Pablo Torre. I think it's because he's got questions for his friends and colleagues and union representatives. I see him taking a lot of notes here, but messy, I don't think he wants to ask any questions here. I think he might have questions for others, though.
I welcome Andrew's thoughtful silence. Hawk's thoughtful note-taking silently is meaningful just because all I actually want, Dan, is for players to hear this, to see the reporting, to make a judgment for themselves. Again, I am not here to say, trust me, I got this, period. I'm saying, look at the document I published. Look at the interviews we did. Look at the reporting. Now look at Don Van Natta. Look at Kalen Collar. Look at ESPN wading into the waters. Why is this happening? Just ask yourself, why is this happening? And consider what it costs. And by the way, as I believe Hawk is aware, there is a CBA renegotiation coming up in 2030. And those things start years before, right? The setting of the table, the gaining of leverage, the angling in the public for what to do and how to win what the NFL owners are very loath to give, which is a percentage point of power, right? That process, if time keeps on wearing on here, the players are actively losing money by not dealing with this because it feels inevitable that they're going to have to.
What do you believe will be the end point on this? And in your wildest dreams, the most seismic of scenarios that results from your reporting is blank?
I think inevitably there'll be a change in leadership at the NFLPA. I just think that the smoke is too obvious.
Wow. So you think that Lloyd Howell his job will be affected by your reporting?
You're going for that Peabody, huh?
Oh, I'm not. By the way, this is a pretty warm to kind of lukewarm take. I think that's obvious at this point.
The Peabody?
All of it. All of it. No, look, Lloyd Howell, man, separately, and we haven't even gotten into this part, there's a separate investigation into this whole other business that the NFLPA is embroiled in, which is called the One Team sort of enterprise. This is the Tony Clark thing with the MLBPA and all that stuff. Lloyd Howell is under FBI investigation right now for a thing that I believe is actually less interesting than what we're talking about right now. That's how this sort of was set up, that was preceding my reporting. So I think Lloyd Howell inevitably cannot sustainably be doing this job. I think that J.C. Tretter, who would have been the successor, by the way, in a very interesting sequence of events, right? Lloyd Howell has to be ousted. Who is the interim executive director? The logical successor might be the guy who installed Lloyd Howell with the title that had never before existed in the union of Chief Strategy Officer, who's kind of the guy who's been sliding in the background, but we named it in our reporting. J.C. Tretter, former Cleveland Browns center, right? That guy, the question is, would the players install him if they see everything that we have reported? And if it's not him, then the question is, who then next? And simultaneous to all of that is the fact that this 61-page document has the NFL owner's nightmare, right? 8 owners, discovery, texts, emails, transcript, Roger Goodell caught on emails with his chief, by the way, his chief lawyer. Then, I will say this without too much of a spiking of the football here, who then later, if you look at the timeline, resigned from his job. This is Jeff Pash, the general counsel, the famous general counsel for the NFL, stepped down, resigned after internally we know this arbitration ruling proceeding was happening in which he was caught on email with Roger Goodell, effectively doing the thing that gave the union the ammo should they choose to use it to get leverage against the NFL. Dan, when I say that this goes all the way to the top, I mean the NFL itself. When I kind of tongue-in-cheekly observed when I was with you last time, the NFL is monitoring the coverage of this story, what I say about this stuff. That is not abstract. I can tell you without being too smelling my own farts about this. The stuff I've reported has been consumed by senior vice presidents in the league office dozens upon dozens of times. I'm talking about refreshes. I'm talking about links being sent. I'm talking about conversations behind the scenes. This is something that is at the highest levels of the most important popular sport in America. And now we're seeing it on delay 15 days later. All of it is leaking out.
Did you answer my question about what the most seismic of the scenarios are? Because you're saying it's pretty, you're saying just their leadership being blown out at the union. You're assuming that that's going to be so. So in the wildest of circumstances where this story catches fire and all league partners are forced to report on it, what is the most seismic of hypothetical results here?
I will phrase it more journalistically responsibly, but if I was running the union and I got this ruling in which Roger Goodell was caught saying this stuff in coordination with the owners, the 8 owners who were named in this and others, one might presume, I would be calling for Roger Goodell's job. Now, will that happen in real time? I doubt that, but that is actively what the leverage that the union might have had here is. They could have gone to Capitol Hill. They could have called for hearings. They could have made an enormous public display of look at what we're dealing with heading into our next CBA, is that the leadership of the NFL itself is doing this stuff. And so I'm not predicting. I'm merely saying that this is actually concretely in the document part of the conversation.
Wow. Pablo, first of all, you speak English beautifully. Where'd you learn that? I got people in this room that can't speak English as well as you can. Secondly, I'm kind of disgusted at our recent text exchanges, which is just us bartering. You ask me for contacts to help you find stuff out, and I'm just constantly pitching you stuff to find out. So I'm curious, like, a lot of your friendships have devolved into people just treating you like ChatGPT, right? And say, hey, find out about this, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I did an episode. The episode I loved, by the way, that we just did on Tuesday was about competitive bird watching. And I think it's one of our greatest episodes we've ever done. And nobody gives a shit. And so I am.
That's true. I skipped that one.
What?
I skipped it.
Oh my God. It's so good.
Nah, make me care about bird watching.
It has blowjobs, jizz, banging. It has a chase for 10,000 birds with a guy holding a Wilt Chamberlain like sign that says 10,000 on it in a jungle. It has,
and that's all just a text message exchange between Pablo and Mike. That's,
yeah.
We didn't even get into the bird watching yet.
It's so good in a real way, but no one cares. And so I've been on Twitter bartering, to Mike's point, and I'm like saying, everyone's saying, can you investigate Jeffrey Epstein? And I'm like, what about these birds though? and so I've said, if everybody watches the bird watching episode on YouTube, I will investigate Jeffrey Epstein. So if that's what it takes.
To the roof.
If that's what it takes.
What does everybody mean? Earth? If everyone on Earth watches it?
7.6 billion listens later.
That could be someone else's beat. Find out about the Chris Paul Lakers trade.
No, basketball reasons. Yeah, I've been looking into that one. I've been sniffing around that one. But the birds. We're going to talk about a scandal.
Man.
10,000 birds.
As a hawk, I'm interested.
Absolutely.
We don't want to talk about your bird watching episode. Pablo Torre finds out, though, if you want more information about all of his curiosities. It is exceptionally popular. Thank you, Pablo. Good seeing you. Good talking to you. Take care.
Thank you, guys. And Mike, I'll text you later.
What do you guys think about Deion Sanders saying that college